continuing happy and blessed Christmas season to you on this Holy Family Sunday. And this Sunday is most special this year, for this is the beginning of the Holy Year in all of the dioceses of the world, because Pope Francis wanted it that way. He opened up one Holy Year door at St. Peter's on Christmas Eve night, and then said everybody else do it afterwards, namely today. So you heard the first part of the homily if you were outside, because that indiction letter is his. That's his words when he's talking about the Holy Year. I'm not going to repeat them here, right? See, you've heard it so brilliantly outside. But I do want to say a few words about the Holy Year and about the Feast of the Holy Family. The theme Pope Francis has given to the Holy Year is "Hope does not disappoint." That was what Father Bain read at the beginning of the indiction of the Holy Year letter. Hope does not disappoint. We are called disciples of hope. We are those disciples, hope. And what we do here in Houston right now, in Galveston, they're going to do in about a half hour, because we have to do both poles of the diocese, as it were. The South, the original diocese, as you know, was in the Cathedral of St. Mary in Galveston. And then in 1960, they added the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart. So we have two places to be glad and rejoice, and two places for pilgrimage. And I do hope this year that we will be disciples of hope. And the Pope wants this to happen starting for all dioceses throughout the world on Holy Family Sunday. So we must have a reason for this. Let us think a little bit about the Holy Family as it is given to us today in the Gospel reading. The Gospel reading is preceded by a most interesting book of the Old Testament, the book of Sirach, written originally by Sirach's grandfather in Hebrew, and then Sirach himself, Ben Sirach, translated it into Greek. That's how the church knows it in its Greek version. And it is a summary of all of the Jewish faith up until about 150 years before the birth of Christ. It's a most fascinating book, highly treasured by the early church. Notice how practical it is in telling us about the law of Moses and the commandments. One does this by always being reverent and respectful towards one's parents. Most interesting. That's the way parent-child, generation by generation, will keep alive the thread of God's love for the Jewish people. That reading seems to be shining forth in what happens in this astonishing segment of the Gospel of St. Luke, the only gospel writer who gives us one incident from the hidden life of Jesus. After his birth, there is silence on Jesus Christ in all the Gospels up until his public life, except this one scene in the Gospel of St. Luke. Notice what it says. Mary and Joseph were faithful, practicing Jewish people. They went to the Jerusalem temple every year for Passover. That was their custom. They moved from Nazareth down there all the time, took the baby and the boy Jesus there. In his 12th year, which is an important year for a Jewish young man, right? That's when you do your bar mitzvah. Jesus had done his bar mitzvah. He becomes, therefore, a son of the commandments, son of the law. Isn't it not interesting that that year at Passover, he stays and keeps talking about the law his father had given his people, the Jewish people. He is the true son. This is Luke's hinting. And yet, the mystery of the young man Jesus is astonishingly difficult. He asks questions. He gives answers. Meanwhile, his parents are frantically searching for him after Passover is over and everybody has gone home. Joseph and Mary find him. Notice what St. Luke says, 3 days later. When do we hear 3 days again? Will it not be after the passion and death? This is already an anticipation of, St. Luke is saying, of what Jesus will do, not just for the Jewish faith, but for everybody. They find him, and he gives the most astonishing answer. By the way, friends, don't try to apply 20th century psychology to this. This is not some young smart aleck kid saying something to his mom and dad. That's not what Luke is pointing out here. When Jesus responds, notice, why did you look for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? Who is the true temple Jesus is referring to? He's referring to his body, which St. John's Gospel later says that's what he meant. His body is now the true temple. Mary and Joseph and everyone else must look for what is true worship in Jesus' body given for us. It's remarkable, and yet the mystery of his identity is still so hidden. He returns with his parents to Nazareth, and what does St. Luke say Jesus did? Jesus was obedient to them. There is so much at stake here in this simple scene, sisters and brothers. How much Mary and Joseph were looking for the hope of Israel. And in fact, Joseph and Mary had some inkling of it in the infant, in the manger. But as Jesus grew, no doubt his identity seemed like any other young child of Israel. But his identity is really carried to intense depths when he says, why were you looking for me? He's in fact telling his parents, you must draw away from the sheer human inclination. You must begin to look at me in terms of my Father, his real Father in heaven. It's just the most remarkable passage. Jesus' identity is always going to be a mystery. Even after his death and resurrection, sisters and brothers, it's still a mystery. That's why people come in and leave, why they draw close and go away, because Jesus is a mystery of God made flesh. God's divine nature and our human nature put together in one person, Jesus Christ. Pope Francis says we should be looking for Jesus and walking with him as Mary and Joseph did. Do you notice the final words on Mary in the gospel today? And Mary kept all these things, pondering them in her heart. The Greek text uses the word symbolizing, which is the exact opposite of what? Diabolic, right? Mary is always trying to put Jesus' words together in her heart and mind, to put them together so they will lead her on. She's the perfect disciple of hope. That's the other point of today's reading. Mary's the perfect disciple of hope. She's the one who will carry us in procession. In that tiny little procession we did across the street, that's a symbol of what we should be doing all year. Pope Francis reminds us that in this discipleship of hope, we should also be looking for those who are at the margins and are outcasts, because their ways, they are people who will help us to hear again and understand again the identity of Jesus. My Father's house, the mystery of Jesus. In the gospel that Deacon Joe read for us before the liturgy began today outside, we read from John, in which Thomas says, Master, how are we to know the way since we don't know where you're going? Jesus says, Thomas, at this point, I am the way and the truth and the life. If we follow Jesus as the way, truth, and life, then indeed we shall become like Mary, disciples of hope. May God give this local church of Galveston, Houston, a beautiful sense of hope this year. Find one person who seems to be out of hope, maybe anxious, maybe despairing. Take their cause to yourself. Become friendly. Allow your sense of hope that you gained from your Christian faith, your Catholic understanding of faith, shine on them. I don't think Francis is asking anything more of that, one at a time. May the Lord so grant it in our local church in the next year. God bless you for the holy year, and don't forget to visit the nativity scene today. That's always important. By the way, my final comment, I know yesterday we had storms around here. Some people, even our diocese, have been affected. We want to pray for them, and when it's time to bring some help to those people as well. God bless you.